hopefully that's it all sorted now. You should be able to hear me now. Hopefully you'll find me, retune me in now, and you'll hear everything that I say. Let's see. Okay, you should be able to hear me all fine now. Sorry about that. It was YouTube's changed my microphone settings, so unfortunately you can't continue and do it as you are live. You have to actually delete and start again. So hopefully you can hear me all now. If you've rejoined me. Just like as I was saying before, if you've got any questions, post them up on the bottom of the screen there, and I'll answer them as soon as I see them on the screen. Just to say as well, I've been doing these virtual live walking tours. I hope you've been enjoying them. I hope to do add about another couple this week coming up, possibly. Hi, Martin. Nice to see you here. Yeah, so hopefully I'm hoping to add maybe another couple of virtual live walking tours this week to the YouTube channel for you. And hopefully as well be able to do actual live one at actual locations once this lockdown and all that ends, and I can see what I can do for you there live from these locations. Obviously I can't do anything about that because it's non-essential. There's no traveling around the country to get to these locations as they are at the moment. So if anyone's got any questions, just post them up on the screen there and I'll answer. Anything to do with on the buses, can be about the cast and crew, or anything to do with my books. I've written 4 books in total. Anything to do with the filming locations, anything to do with the crew that worked on the buses, anything like that. That's good, yeah. Thought you'd be able to hear me now, that's good. Yeah, so just got any questions, post them up on the screen and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. Can be about anything to do with on the buses, the filming locations, cast and crew, the films, episodes, anything like that. Also about my walking tours, if any you've got any questions about that. You may know, some of you, that obviously organise the On the Buses events down in Boreham Wood. Sadly, we've had to cancel this year's event. All refunds for that now have been paid out though in total, so that's good. Everyone's been paid the refunds for that event. Sadly, it was inevitable, really. We are going to try again next year, obviously, in Boreham Wood, so that'll be like summer 2021. Hopefully everything will have died down by then. We'll be back to some sort of normality by then. So anyone got any questions, just post them up and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them there. Obviously as well, any questions of course about my books that came out in 2016, that's On the Buses, the filming locations, or an A to Z of On the Buses, that came out in 2012, or this was my original book, came out in 2009. It's now only out in paperback. This is the original hardback copy, On the Buses, the complete story. And I've also done a On the Buses quiz book. So if you've got any questions about any of those books, then that's fine. Just fire them up and I'll answer them for you. And anything to do with On the Buses in general, you want to know about the cast or crew or any of that, then I'll go on to that. It's surfaced again, as everyone, a lot of you that are here might very well know that that I run the Facebook filming locations then and now group. Surfaced again all the stuff about Bob Grant again, about the situation, about how things ended up for him. People just don't seem to grasp with Bob. It wasn't anything particularly to do with On the Buses ending and not getting any work after that, because he worked copiously after On the Buses on stage. People tend to think I didn't see him on telly, so he was doing nothing. But that's not the case with a lot of actors. A lot of actors can be very busy on stage and not really appearing a lot on television, but it doesn't mean to say they are unemployed, if you know what I mean. That was the case of Bob. Bob was very busy on stage from when On the Buses finished, right up until about the mid 1980s. He was producing and directing and writing his own stage shows. He was doing tours abroad, doing tours in the UK. So he was very busy. His only things that began to turn sour for him was when once his stage roles dried up. Bob was very much like Michael Robbins, and that they both loved stage work more than anything else. That's what they loved doing, first and foremost, even above TV and films and all of that. To the layman, like a lot of the fans, TV's their main form of media. But that's not the case for actors. A lot of actors prefer the live interaction with the audience in front of them that they get from appearing on stage, which was the case with Bob and the case with Michael. If you go and have a look at the interview that's on the YouTube channel, you can hear Bob. He says his first love was his wife, and thereafter it was his stage work. So it doesn't say it was his wife and then it was his TV work. It was stage work. That tells you straight away what he loved doing first and foremost. The same with another interview that I've got. He talks about how the highlights of his careers was the early 60s when he done shows like Blitz and all of that, big grand shows in the West End. That was the highlight for him, if you see what I mean. A lot of people assume that to actors, TV is everything, and that's just not the case, if you see what I mean. It's a lazy assumption to make, really, and to assume that they've never done anything because you haven't seen them on television. John Lyons is another who was in On the Buses. He's not been in a lot on the telly lately, but he's been very busy on stage himself. So that's the sort of thing that happens with a lot of actors. Okay, so if you've got any questions, you know what to do. I've done a little bit of a rambling on there. Post about any questions you've got to do with you've got on the buses, and I'll answer them for you. Or anything to do with filming locations and all of that, that'd be good too. I can answer all your questions on any queries on filming locations. Also, as well, that you will see on the Facebook group, there is the article somebody posted up from Elstree Calling, which backs up what I've said all along about them not actually filming in the houses that you think they filmed in, like the Butler house in the films, because you can see on the Elstree Calling, which is as the actual call sheets, which says what time the actors are to appear at the studios for to do their scenes. This scene in particular was at the Butler house, and obviously internal at the Butler house, but of course where it was being shot was at the studios. It says it itself on the at stage 5 at Elstree Studios. So that purely backs up what I've said all along, that they didn't film in the houses. They filmed on they filmed in the studio on a studio set. Radio, TV, and memories is asking, was On the Buses ever released on? Yeah, it was released on video On the Buses. I think it first came out in 1990 on video or something like that. I'm not sure. I didn't actually have a copy, I don't think, but I'm sure my big brother definitely had a copy. People have posted up copies of the actual cover for the VHS videos, the first releases as well, on my Facebook group as well. So definitely, yeah, it definitely was released on video. I think it was sometime like 1990 or something like that. Might have been the first VHS release. Okay, so if you've got any questions like radio and TV memories just done, just post them up and I can answer them for you. just to say as well, on the writing stage of things, I was working on two fronts with the books. There was one that I was working on that wasn't locations based, and there was another one that, obviously, the second edition of my film and locations book. That's the one that I'm going to crack on with now. The other one will take a back seat for now until I've done the film and locations book, and then I can revisit the other book at a later date. Obviously, the writing of that book will be the film and locations book will depend a lot on what happens with the lockdown and the current situation we're in. Because obviously, for me to crack on with that, then I've got to visit these locations and photograph them. But obviously, until we start to get back to a semblance of normality, I won't be able to do any of that, sadly. So it all depends on what's happening with the lockdown and all that. So, any more questions? Any questions at all? Just post them up on the screen there and I'll answer them for you. Another book as well, if you're an On the Buses fan, that we'd recommend that you get. It's very hard to get hold of now, though. It's not my book at all. It's Ronnie Wolf, one of the co-writers and creators of On the Buses. It's called My Life in Memoirs. It's a very good book. It goes all through his career about the different shows that he worked on, how he got involved with Ronnie Chesney, and right at the very back as well, you've got the full script of Back on the Buses, of course, which didn't come about really, but then it's all in the back of the book. It's called Back on the Buses. It's all in there. But you might find it hard getting that. The best place to maybe look for that, I would say, is maybe eBay, because I don't think it's available out there for the in terms of it, places like Amazon. I think it's actually out of print now, but you'll probably find that people have maybe bought it, read it, and then they put it up on for sale on eBay. So that's a good place to try and get hold of a copy, which I would recommend. So if you've got any questions, post them up and I'll answer them for you. Can be about anything to do with On the Buses, obviously. About my books or the film and locations, anything like that, and then I'll answer them for you. Just to say as well, I've been busy the last few days printing off a whole load of for the next stage of my book as well. Obviously, I'm doing things like printing off my screen grabs. So that's the screen grabs that I do. I do the screen grabs of locations that I've got to visit to photograph. They're all there. I've got about 120 of these at the moment. So these are all what I'll take to the filming locations when I go to visit them to photograph them. I'll use these as a guide as to what I want to get in the picture in the background, so that I get a good like for like. So when I'm standing there with the camera, I've got that to guide me of where I want to, what sort of a view I want for the location, if you see what I mean. Okay, so you got any questions? Post them up and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. Another thing, if anyone's on the group as well, on my Facebook group, again, got things like that for sale. Again, they're on the top of the page there. You can buy badges. These were all the types of things that I'd intended to sell at the On the Buses event in the summer, but obviously that's not going to be happening now. So I've got badges like these, badges like PSV badges, like those designed. Loads of other stuff as well. Just pop along to that and have a look. It's in the very top page of the page, and you can let me know if there's anything that takes your fancy. Okay, so any more questions, anyone? If you've got questions, post them up and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. So let's see. I'm going to try something new here as well. I'm going to try and see if I can share us onto the let's see. A bit too technical for me tonight. When was the first episode, Adrian? Yeah, cheers. When was the first episode of On the Buses? I'm sure the airing date was the 25th of February, Friday the 25th of February, 1969 was the first episode. So it was 25th of February, 1969 was the first episode. Obviously, there was only 7 episodes in the first series. So obviously the first series had ran its course by about, I think it was April time. And then the second series began in, I think it was the autumn. Yeah, that's right, Adrian. The first few episodes were in black and white. The first 2 series was black and white. First series that came out in colour of On the Buses was the 3rd series in early 1970. And thereafter, there were some black and white episodes in series 4. That was due to a colour technician strike. Yep, cheers. Thanks for the question, Adrian. If you've got any more questions, just post them up and I'll answer them for you. Questions like that, anything to do with the episodes or films or anything to do with my books or filming locations or walking tours and things like that, I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. Yeah, I'm sure everyone would feel like that, really. The thing as well that was impressive, so impressive about On the Buses, that when it was our successes, if you think about it, it was such a time when there was such a rich vein of comedies around. So I had a heck of a lot of competition, but it still managed to get to the top of the ratings. The last one was, I think the last one was the 16th of May, 1973. Sunday the 16th of May, 1973. And that was gardening time. So it was just like about a week before they started work on holiday on the buses. So yeah, like I was saying, if you think about it, how impressive it is that it got to where it did on the buses. You've got to remember it was airing at a time when there was a lot of classic sitcoms around that it was competing against for viewers, if you see what I mean. It was competing against the likes of Dad's Army, Steptoe and Son, Till Death Us Do Part, things like that, and the Likely Lads and stuff. There was all that sort of stuff that was on at the same time on the other side, on the other sides and on the same channels, all competing for viewers, if you see what I mean. So it's impressive that it managed to do so well in terms of how well it did do, if you see what I mean. If you look now in terms of what there is in comedy-wise, there's basically nothing. But back in the day when On the Buses was out and about and airing for the first time, there was such a rich vein of comedy. Martin, I might post one up tomorrow. I'll have to see. I might post one up for you tomorrow, Martin. Hope to do another one maybe later in the week as well, as another thing that I hope to do as well. So just watch his space. I will let you know, obviously, when it is another one posted up. I'll post up links to it on the my Facebook page and all of that. Yeah, it's totally right, Adrian. The comments today is basically garbage. From the point of on the buses, when on the buses was around, you had on the buses up in the obviously was started out in late 1960s, 1969 and 70. You had the 1970s, 60s, and 70s was top notch for comedy. The 80s, there was a slight dip in the amount of what you would call classic sitcoms. That was a decline, I would say, from the early 1980s onwards. Like when you got to the 1990s, it was still on the decline. By the late 1990s, it was at a real low edge, and it's even went even lower since the into the new millennium, basically in terms of sitcoms. I mean, I could count on the fingers of one hand the amount of sitcoms that I would say in this millennium that I've watched and found funny. Still, Game being one. I'm not sure if the Goodnight Sweetheart stretched into the new millennium or not, or whether it ended before it. But that's the only two that I can think of. Whereas if you were to talk to me about the 60s or 70s, I could be here for a minute or so, reeling off all the 60s and 70s sitcoms that I used to love watching. If you see what I mean, just shows the difference, really. The 90s was a decline as well. I mean, all I did enjoy shows like the Dinner Ladies, and I think it was what was it? The one with Judy Dench. As time goes by, I found that was quite good. Bottom. Obviously, Goodnight Sweetheart was towards in the 1990s as well, and then obviously before that you had the 80s. So if you see what I mean, it was a gradual decline all the way down. If you see what I mean in terms of the standards and quantity and quality of the sitcoms in that time. So if you've got any questions, just like Adrian there, just post them up. It'll stop me ranting on it, Will, if you just keep questions coming in, and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. It can be about anything you want, anything to do with the filming locations, or anything to do with the actors that you wondered about, or the buses they used, or anything like that, or the production team, crew, and companies. Then just post them up, and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. Yeah, well, they don't really do A-grade anyway. They don't really do sitcoms today. I mean, it sort of like makes your blood boil because you hear people raving on about how brilliant or how good they think Mrs. Brown's Boys is, and to me, it's just utter garbage. For me, Adrian, probably sort of like the first time that I've seen it, obviously, was as a little kid. I mean, I was born maybe about 3 months before On the Buses first aired. So I only remember it from probably the first run of repeats in the early 70s when I was maybe about 5 years old, and then it went off the air. So probably like from around about the early 70s, and then obviously it disappeared off the air from sort of like maybe the late 70s up until it started getting repeated again. And when it was getting repeated in the mid 1990s, I thought it was Granada Men and Motors, but somebody told me it was Granada Plus that was repeated on the Sky channels, and that's when I saw it for the first time as an adult. Obviously, you could get more of the adult jokes and all of that, and then that sort of like was becoming a fan all over again then. So originally, when I was about 5 years old, early 70s, early to mid 1970s, and then again from the early 19 to mid 1990s, if you see what I mean. Because it disappeared from from the TV screens. It wasn't repeated in the 1980s at all, really. I remember watching episodes of it, obviously on the first sort of like run throughs, maybe the early mid 70s, late 70s, like yourself, and then it disappeared off the screens for until about sometime in the early 1990s. I would say it was, and then it appeared back on. I think it was. I always thought it was Granada Men and Motors, but someone said it was Granada Plus. I'm not too sure really. I still something tells me it was Granada Men and Motors that I watched it on, but I'm not too sure. And then obviously after that, I started up my forum 2006. I started up the first On the Buses forum on the internet, which was the original On the Buses forum that I started up in 2006. And then that's when I started talking about with the members about organising an event. And that's how that came about. The event started in 2008. Somebody else was writing on the Buses book around about that time, 2007, 2006, 2007, but it fell by the wayside. Obviously, me being a fan, I was looking forward to reading it. Then my forum members said to me, "Well, you know a lot about On the Buses. Why don't you write one?" And I thought, I wouldn't be able to manage that, but I did used to write creatively. I used to enjoy writing creatively when I was at school, so I thought, go on, I'll give it a go. And then we know what happens. And now I've written 4 of them. Yeah, that was the back on the buses that they were talking about, Adrian. They on the Wogan show. The thing with that is that the funding fell through for it. So you had STV were going to fund it. It's going to be STV because at the time an executive at STV at the time, an executive producer that was there was Brian Izzard, who you may remember the name. He produced series 7 episodes of On the Buses, and he also produced he was also the sort of director of Holiday on the Buses. So obviously they had that connection there, so that's why they obviously went to him. But sadly, the funding fell through for it. That had been put aside at STV. The funding was spent elsewhere, and it fell by the wayside. You couldn't get any other company to take it on. So that's what happened to it. And that comes from Anna Karen as well. I initially thought it might have had something to do with Michael Robbins' ill health, because he was starting to fight cancer around that time. Could see he didn't look too well in the Wogan show. So before I got the full SP from Anna about why it didn't happen, I always thought that it was something to do with Michael's ill health, because I know that the ethos of the writers was it was either all of them or none of them, if you know what I mean. It needed to be all of them that were in it, or it wasn't going to happen. So I thought maybe Michael might have started getting cancer treatment or something around about then, and it obviously delayed things. And sadly, Michael passed away in 1992, the end of 1992, I think it was. And that killed it off. It wasn't that at all. It was because the funding fell through on it. Well, if you think about it, Adrian, it's sad in a way, but it's inevitable, really, if you think about it, because it was made about 50 years ago now. So if you look at all the cast, the majority of the cast all had a very good lifespans. If you look at them. Doris nearly made it to the century. Reg made it into his 90s. Stephen Lewis almost made it into the 90s. Bob Grant possibly could have made it up to that age if he hadn't have done what he done. Michael Robbins was the only one that died relatively young at, I think he was 61 or 62 with cancer. So and Anna's in her 80s now as well, so they did all have a pretty decent lifespan, if you see what I mean. It's not like anyone died in like Richard Beckinsale, it's something like in their 30s or anything like that. I'll be happy if I live till I'm 80 or 90, I tell you. So, do you see what I mean? It's sad that Anna's the only one left, but there again, it's inevitable, really. You've got to remember that the last On the Buses was made 47 years ago now. And obviously, the likes of Reg was well, even past middle age by the time it was making On the Buses, so it was inevitable, really. I mean, Reg would have been over 100 if he had not passed away when he did, and he was 93, I think, when he passed away. So they all lived to a very good age. So, you know, it's like it's inevitable. Everyone's got their own time, really. I mean, sad, really. I mean, in a way, it's sort of like it's quite surprising that they have the lifespans that they did, because Reg had a history of heart trouble. They all smoked pretty heavily. So the likes of Doris obviously lived until nearly 100. Even the writers as well. Ronnie Chesney was 97 when he died, and Ronnie Wolf was, I think he was nearly at 90. So even the writers lived to a good age as well. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I call a young age. I mean, I would understand that if any of the On the Buses cast. Obviously, Michael Robbins is the exception, but of course it was cancer that did for Michael, bless him. So if anyone's got any questions, just post them up and join in. Don't be afraid. Just post up any questions you want to know about On the Buses, and I'll answer them for you. My favourite character in On the Buses was Arthur. I just liked his dry wit and his great delivery of these lines and his facial expressions. Steve says he thinks he should have stopped when Reg left. Well, they did. They couldn't anyway because they were all contracted to a 7th series, Steve. So if you think about it, they'd all contracted themselves out for a 7th series. You can't just say, right, I'm down in tools now. That's it. Reg is left. They had to complete it, if you see what I mean. But they did call it a day at the end of the 7th series. London Weekend actually wanted an 8th series, but the remaining cast that were left over all said, "Nah, it's okay. We're not going to go on." So you had the likes of Bob Grant, Stephen Lewis, Doris Hare, Anna Karen left in the cast, then the main cast, and they all agreed amongst themselves that that was it. They were going to call a time on it then, call a halt to it. Even though London Weekend wanted an 8th series, they said, "No, we're not going to do it anymore." So, in a way that they did call an end to it as soon as they could. If you see what I mean, Steve. I mean, like I said, it's not the interview that I've got up here. I've got another interview somewhere of Bob Grant, but I can't find it anywhere, which is a shame because I would put it up onto my YouTube channel as well. Bob says about ending it, he said that himself and Stephen had run out of ideas by then, at the end of by running through 7th series. And he said they all agreed to call time on it then because they didn't want to continue on to a point when people were switching over saying, "Oh, not that old rubbish again." So they wanted to quit while they were still at the top, which it relatively was. It was, if I remember rightly, I think it was still hitting the top, getting in the top 20 of the TV chart. So it was still a good viewer cooler. Yeah, he did. I mean, you watch him and other things that he's in. There's a few clips of him, and in the interview, you hear him there and his actual accent there. But that's a trait that a lot of actors have got. Michael Robbins as well was quite posh as well, really, compared to how he spoke in On the Buses. For me, anyway, Steve, it was basically the downward trend of On the Buses really started, I think, when the writers left to work in America, which was Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney, and they left at the end of Series 5. Then they had to bring in new writers, and then sort of like there wasn't any really continuity then. And so Series 6 episodes got a little bit on the darker side. They had Arthur and Olive arguing a lot more sort of like aggressively it came across as, whereas that sort of scripting wasn't really in the fifth series, if you see what I mean, when Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney were writing it. So I think that was the sort of like the real point when things started to turn sour, was the end of Series 5. By that time, Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney had gone to work in America on Lots of Luck for the On the Buses American version, and also they wrote scripts, I think, for Marty Feldman, who they worked with as well out there. So and then during that time, On the Buses was still running back in the UK. They needed to get new script writers in. People like George Layton and Jonathan Lynn wrote episodes. Bob and Stephen wrote episodes. They also had Gary Chambers and Wally Marston wrote, so got a bit of a sort of like a mishmash of sort of like different types. They all had their own styles of writing and things like that. So it sort of like became a little bit more of a mishmash, if you know what I mean, as well. So I think that didn't help its cause either. As I said, that's why I say I think the rot sort of like started in from the buses from Series 6 onwards, I would say, and then Michael left. Which really was a big, I would say that was a bigger blow than even losing Reg, I would say, quite possibly. Because you've got to think of how pivotal Michael Robbins' character was. He used to bounce off of Olive, and also in the at home, that's who Reg used to, Stan used to bounce off of that character as well. So he was a very pivotal sort of character in the Butler house. And once he had gone, it was like a big vacuum was left, in my opinion, anyway. So, any questions? Just keep posting them up, and I'll answer them for you on the screen here. Hope you like my On the Buses mug. So, you know what to do. Just if you've got any questions, post them up on the screen there, and I'll answer them as soon as I see them. So, like I say, sometime this week, hopefully, I'll do maybe a couple of them, maybe virtual tours. Might be 2, it might be 3. I'll see. It depends on how my time works out for getting all of that done. If you see what I mean. And then obviously you'll see them. You'll all get if you're all subscribers here, you'll all get I don't know how it works. I think you all get a notification when something new comes up. So if you've got any questions, just post them up and I'll answer them for you. So other comedies, what other comedies do I like? The likes of Porridge, that was an absolute classic. Steptoe and Son, Man About the House, Rising Damp, The Likely Lads, Only Fools and Horses, George and Mildred, Till Death Us Do Part, Good Night, Sweetheart. I quite like The Good Life as well. Ones like that. Anyway, that's you get the gist there, don't you, Adrian? Obviously, they carry on films as well, but they weren't exactly like sitcoms. Like obviously. So, you got any more questions? Just post them up, and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. Well, that's a problem, really. I mean, the thing is, with telly today, it's really pretty sterile, really, if you think about it. It's all reality this, reality that, or Master Chef this, Bake Offs and things like that. What was the first station to broadcast on the buses? Well, it would have been ITV, obviously, but in those days, back in those days, it was totally different. ITV was all split up into regions. So obviously, if you lived down in London, you had London Weekend, and I think it might have been associated with the Fusion at that time. I don't know if Thames was around then, but you had in the Midlands you had ATV, and then it later became Central. Places like Yorkshire, you had Yorkshire TV. Around Manchester, you had Granada. Scotland was STV. Grampian was for the north of Scotland. Time Tees was for the up Newcastle way. So ITV as it is today is totally different from what it was back then. They all had their own little regional station, but it was like on the buses that was a London Weekend production. It would have been chosen to be aired whenever these other channels chose to air them. But obviously, I think the first channel that would have aired it was London Weekend, which would have been at its time was, I think it was 7:30 on a Friday evening, if I remember rightly. I'll just check my book here for that. I'm sure it was 7:30 on a Friday evening, the first slot for it that it had. Yeah, Friday the 28th, sorry, the 28th of February at 7:30. That was its air date. So that would have been the likes of London Weekend would have screened it at that time. Some other channels might have done as well. Other ones might have staggered it and maybe chose to show it on the Saturday or maybe the Sunday, that sort of thing. If you see what I mean, Victoria. It was all totally, as I said, ITV was all totally different in terms of now it's just one big company that goes out with something apart from the news. The news is the only thing that you get that's regionalised, whereas back in the day, you used to have your own regionalised channels in your own areas. That doesn't happen today. It's just ITV that you basically get. And I think that's part of a problem as well of why there's so much, the standards fallen in my eyes, because back in the day, you used to have all of these little channels like London Weekend, Thames, Granada. They were all making their own sitcoms and they were all competing to be the top dog, if you see what I mean. So there was competition there for it. Now there's none of that competition because none of those companies actually exist now. You had each of their own companies all made a sitcom that was really top notch. Like obviously London Weekend had the likes of On the Buses and Please Sir. The likes of Thames have Bless This House around this time when I'm talking about the early 1970s. So they were all battling for their own little slots. Obviously, Thames as well had the likes of, later on, they went on to have the likes of Man About the House and all of that. They were all vying, and obviously the likes of Granada, I think it was it Granada that had done Rising Damp? Yorkshire done Rising Damp, but they were all sort of like competing with one another for their own sort of like slots, their own classic sitcoms. But nowadays, there's nothing like that at all, really. It's all just ITV's one big company, and there's just no variety. If I was to show you now TV schedule from the 1970s, 80s compared to today. It's like night and day. You see what I mean? You used to get sort of like back in the 70s, you used to have something like you'd start off around about 7 o'clock with quiz. That'd be compared by a top quiz compare like Bob Monkhouse or Bruce Forsyth, something like that. And then you used to get a soap, it might be Coronation Street probably. Then you would get something like a sitcom. Might be Dad's Army, might be on the buses. Then you'd get something like a cop drama or something like that. Might be something like the Sweeney or Special Branch, and then the news, and then you got a film and something for everybody. Now it's like Bake Off this, Celebrity that. It's just basically sterile. There's no creativity in television whatsoever today, really. It's pretty sad the state of affairs, the way things have gone, really. I mean, if you go back and look, there are places around online, because I've done it before as well. You can go back and look and see what things were being shown on telly now, like on this night, say 40 years ago, and you'll see the difference between what's on today and what was on back then. It's the variety in terms of what you had the choice to watch on those channels. You may have only had 3 channels like BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV, or the regionalised ITV. But it was much better than the sort of like it's crazy really when you think about it. There was much more variety than what there is on the 200 odd channels that you've got to watch today, if you see what I mean. It's crazy really when you think about it, but there you go. Okay, so any more questions, just keep posting them up and I'll answer them for you. So you know what to do, just post up your message. Just post up your message and your question. I'll answer them as soon as I see it. And it wasn't only that as well. If you think about how television was back then as well, it was comedy. There was variety to the comedy. You had your sort of like more upper class sort of like comedy that the BBC went for. You had sort of like your non-PC comedy sitcoms, like On the Buses was one. Love Thy Neighbour was another. You had your sort of like your more of you had sketch comedies like Monty Python show, you had the Dick Emery show, we done the comedy sketches, you had comedy double acts in the caliber and Morecambe and Wise, the Two Ronnies. There's nothing like that nowadays. All you've got is the Ant and Dick, if you see what I mean. It's really quite remarkable when you think about how far things have dropped in terms of standard of quality and quantity. Really, it's frightening, really. So if you've got any questions, you know what to do. Just post them up and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. Yeah, that's what I mean. There was Rise and Damp. That was like Rise and Damp was, I think that was Yorkshire. I think Rise and Damp, but they all each sort of like own little individual TV franchise. They all have their own. They all vie for their own sort of like slot in terms of top comedy and all of that. You don't get that nowadays because you've only got ITV really. And that's all that there is, and they don't really, they abandoned any sort of like thingy to comedies anyway. I don't think they even bothered making comedies now. That's how far down the pan they've gone, really. I mean, it's quite frightening about what the standard is like today compared to what it was back in the 60s and 70s, if you see what I mean. It's, in terms of comedy as well, I suppose the real reason as well behind comedy is comedy today is like it's two-dimensional, because there's so much that you can't say and you can't do for that won't get past the auditors and all of that. It's sort of like it's frightening, really. It's so PC. It's made comedy like sterile today, if you know what I mean. Back in the day, as I say, you could get away with so much more. There was a wider spectrum of comedy that you could do. You could do slapstick, you could do non-PC, you could do saucy stuff, you could do just your normal, bog standard, run-of-the-mill sitcom, if you see what I mean. But now you can't get away with half of that stuff. And so it's just sort of like it's throttled any creativity, if you see what I mean, which is really sad, really. I mean, they do the right thing on, like, there's a channel over here, Adrian, that's called Talking Pictures. So before they screen things, they do put up a warning and say that there's material here that may appear dated and may offend people today, but it was fine when it was originally made, which is what they should do on all sorts of things. But instead, over here in the UK, they edit a lot of it out. They make the decision for you what you can and can't watch, which is sort of like it's not fair for those who want to watch it, if you see what I mean. So it's just that's what's throttled a lot of the creativity that you get in TV nowadays. But there you go. If you've got any questions anyway, like I say, just post them up and I'll answer them for you. Any questions to do with On the Buses, anything to do with the filming locations, anything to do with the cast or crew that worked on the buses, or the episodes, or the spin-off films, anything to do with my walking tours, if you're interested in them, or the events that are organised down in Bournemouth as well, just pop it up and I'll answer it for you. Well, it is Victoria. That's what I'm saying. It's two-dimensional comedy because there's so many things that are just not allowed to make it three-dimensional. You can't, like back in the day of On the Buses. On the Buses was it was very non-PC, because it would sort of like have a bit of sexism in there. But that's the way life was back then. That's how things were, and it portrayed exactly how it was. But you wouldn't be able to get away with that today, because obviously you can't say boo to a goose nowadays, or it's deemed offensive, which is a bit sort of silly. And I think I might be sort of like totally wrong here, but I think that is part of the problem of why there's so many issues in the world, because we're all socially gagged. And we can't say this and we can't say that. We can't have a joke about this, can't have a joke about that. But back in the day, we could all have a joke and laugh at one another, and that was great. But now people cannot take the slight. You just need to look at somebody nowadays and they'll take offence and maybe punch you in the face or something like that. But back in the day, you could laugh about each other and things like that. And I'm not sure why they're not showing Lola. Yeah, I can see your comment there, Lola. So obviously I can see your comments. I can see your comments there. They've just come right up. I've just seen one of them. You said you love the theme song for Benny Hill. If you've got any questions, then just post them up, Lola. Any questions to do with On the Buses, and I'll answer them for you. Adam, the back on the buses didn't happen because the funding fell through for that. So it was going to be funded by STV, but sadly the funding fell through for that. So that's why it didn't happen. STV were going to be funding it. They had put aside funds for it, but sadly the funds got squandered away on other projects, and it never happened. Basically, that comes from Anna Karen, by the way. Which is sad, really, but there you go. It's there wasn't anybody else that was willing to come in and think. I suppose part of the reason behind as well why you might not have got anybody else wanting to touch it then was because, like what we're talking about, things had become so much more politically correct then, if you see what I mean. So they might have been frightened of touching it because of how it was deemed back in the 70s when it aired. So that might have put off a lot of companies then as well, because you were going through into that change into a much more PC age as well. Yeah, it's in the book here. If you want to try and get hold of this book, I mentioned it earlier. There's this book. This is the only place that I know that you'll find it. But this book's out of print now. It's called Ronnie Wolf, My Life and Memoirs. And the script is actually in the back of here of it. It's actually in there, but you would need to look on someplace like eBay because this book is actually out of print now. It's not in print anymore. And then it is there back on the buses, pirate script. That book's out of print now. It was published by Kaleidoscope, but you'll probably find that you won't get it on any place like Amazon. So you'll need to go to the likes of eBay. Yeah, that's it. That's the place to look. It's a good book as well. It's got a lot of good, interesting stuff in there, all about Ronnie Wolf's career, about how he got started in the business, how he met and joined up forces with Ronnie Chesney, about the writing on the buses and all the other stuff that he wrote. So it's very much worth a read, if you know what I mean. It's called My Life and Memoirs, Ronnie Wolf, My Life and Memoirs. Okay, so if you've got any questions, just keep them coming in, and that's good. I'll answer them for you. As I say, Lola, I can see your comments here. Only the first one I've seen of your comments, Lola, was about you loving the theme song for Benny Hill. I didn't see any comments before that. Okay, so questions, just keep them coming in. As long as I've got questions coming in, I'll stay online, answer them for you. It can be anything to do with filming locations, anything to do with on the buses at all, cast crew that worked on the show, anything to do with my events. If you've got any questions about walking tours organised or the on the buses events organised in Boreham Wood, then just post them up and I'll answer them for you. Yeah, like I was saying, Victoria, what I mean by two-dimensional is there's things that you just cannot do in a comedy now, whereas back in the days of the 60s and 70s, they had a free reign, they had a free reign of what they could have a laugh and a joke about. Nowadays, you can't. It's a no-no, if you see what I mean. I'm not too sure about that, Adam. No, I'm not sure what the plot is for that. I've seen the one with the goose and all of that. Jack's hanging off the back of the bus. He's got a bottle of whiskey in his hand and all of that. And then they end up, the goose ends up escaping and they have to chase after it. I'm not too sure about the other one, though. Obviously, the other one was a slightly earlier one. I think that was 1969 or 1970. I'm not too sure exactly what that one's about. It might have something somewhere about it online somewhere. If you look for it, it might have the plot somewhere on like IMDb or something like that. I'm not too sure. So if you've got any questions, just post them up and I'll answer them for you. It just depended when they were making them, though, Adam. That's the thing. They did do Christmas episodes, but it depended when the series were actually being made. If you see what I mean, Series 4, they were in the midst of running through Christmas with episodes. The same goes for Series 5, I think it was, with the Boxing Day Social. So they were sort of like they were making episodes around that time of the year. The earlier ones, they didn't tend to do that. Like Series 1 was February until about April. I think Series 2 was something like June till about September. Series 3 was January till about March, late March, early April. Series 4 was more up into the time running through to Christmas. Series 5 was likewise, but Series 6 and Series 7, they were, Series 6 was early 1972, Series 7 was early 1973, so there just wasn't, it was just came at a time of year when they obviously wouldn't have been relevant, obviously, because they were sort of like made in the early part of the year. You did get the two Christmassy type episodes, which were obviously Boxing Day Social and also Christmas Duty. Christmas Duty Series 4, which was black and white because of the colour technician strike, and Boxing Day Social was Series 5, 1973. sorry, what am I saying? 1971, Series 5. Okay, so just keep your questions. If you've got any more questions, just post them up and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. So just to say, in terms of for the writing of, like obviously, here's the filming locations book. This has got 207 locations in it, all black and white photographs as well. So if you're thinking about buying this, don't go expecting colour photos like you see on the Facebook group. They're all black and white photos for obvious reasons, to keep the print costs of the book down. Now, if you look how broad that book is for 207 locations, by the time I come to do the second edition of this, it's going to go from 207 locations in this up to somewhere between 450 and 500 locations. So you can imagine the kind of width that book will be. Adam, yeah, it was sort of pre-Christmas, that episode. You mentioned about Christmas club money and all of that. It was sort of like the run up to Christmas supposed to be, because obviously that's the time of the year that it was made. But specifically, the real Christmas episode, and that one was the Boxing Day Social. So you know what to do. You got any more questions? Just post them up, and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. And if you haven't, I have got an interview, Adam. It is covered in the A to Z book anyway. Like, obviously, I've dictated down because obviously where I got the interview from, they said it's fine to use it in this book here. It's in here, so it's in here in sort of like word format. I have got it somewhere, but I don't know where it is. It was done in 1981, so it's a little bit later than the one that's already uploaded on here. He's talks about how on the buses ended, like the reason for it ending and why they decided to call time on it. He also talks about his stage career and all of that in it, and speaks about being in touch with Reg and all of that. I've got it somewhere, but where it is, I've looked through all my files on my computer. Obviously, since I got that interview, I think I've had like maybe 2 different computers. So I just hope that it's not been flung out with another, what do we call it, another computer, and it's on there somewhere. I'm sure I've got it on somewhere on a flash drive or something like that, but I just can't find it anywhere. But as I say, it is written down here in that A to Z book in written format, if you see what I mean. But I'm pretty certain I've got it somewhere, but I haven't been able to find it. I have looked and looked and looked for it. So any more questions, just post them up and I'll answer them for you. He does speak in that interview that I've got. He speaks about how he speaks to Reg once a week on the telephone, and this is like 1981 or something like that. He's in fine fettle in it as well, which proves to the point. A lot of people think that on the buses ended, Bob Grant got depressed and he was morbid and everything like that from 1973, late 73 onwards after Holiday on the Buses finished, which is total nonsense. No, I don't think that's Sandra Blank. I think she's retired from acting now. I think the problem is with the likes of a lot of actresses that were around then and done on the buses, they would get married, have a family, and obviously in those days the wife would be at home looking after kids. So it takes about 20 years out of somebody's life. And then when she's maybe tried to come back into acting again, it's all changed so much. All of the contacts that she had built up in the business have either retired or passed away, and it's so much harder to get a foothold back into the business again, if you see what I mean. But as far as I know, no, she doesn't act anymore. That's a past career for her now. Obviously, she attends the On the Buses events that we do. She's been to about 3 or 4 of them now, I think it is. So you know what to do. If you've got any more questions, just post them up and I'll answer them for you. You know what to do. Just post up your questions on the screen. Be anything to do with On the Buses, my books, or anything to do with the episodes or films or the filming locations. I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them on the screen. As I say, these are the type of things that I've got on my group page. As I said, as well, I'm selling stuff like these Luxton and district badges and other stuff. I've got PSV badges. I've got PSV key rings. Oh no, Vicky, it wasn't Stuart Allen. It was Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney's idea of on the buses. They came up with it. Dad's Army started in 1968. At that time, they were looking for ideas for their new sitcom, and they knew Reg Varney, who played Standing on the Buses from. Obviously, Reg Varney had been in an earlier sitcom of theirs called The Rag Trade, which was a big hit in the early 1960s. So around that time, they were wanting to write another sitcom for Reg Varney. They seen how big a hit the Dad's Army had been, and they thought, we haven't done one with uniforms involved in all of that. And they thought, oh, we'll try one about buses. Everyone knows about buses. They all travel on buses like they did in the 1960s. So that's where it sort of like came about from for on the buses. So it was like Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney who came up with the idea for on the buses. Well, I think it was because I think what you mean by that, it wasn't anything nasty. I think it was like I think it took so many takes or something like that. And obviously, I think it was like you have to throw it or something like that. So I'm not too sure if it was something like that. I think it was. I need to watch I haven't watched it for a while, but it was probably something like that because they all got along very well together. I know Anna was very fond of Michael, and Michael was always a complete gent on set and all of that. If you watch that comedy classics documentary, Anna speaks with great affection about Michael Robbins. Like Michael Robbins always used to apologise to her when he had to deliver a nasty line to her after they'd stopped filming. He would apologise to her and say, sorry about that, I didn't want to do it. But, she understood. She knew it was all just in part of the script, basically. So wasn't any issues or anything like that. I need to watch the Wogan show, get the Wogan thing again. I haven't watched it for a while, and I will not in its entirety anyway. So any more questions, just keep them coming in. I'll answer them for you. So you know what to do. Just any questions you've got about on the buses, film locations, casting crew, episodes. Well, it's just not something that's worth really thinking about, really, Martin. So I just try and sort of like keep myself as active as possible. Are there any props still around from filming? Well, you won't see them on eBay. If there's any props and all of that, they're all kept in prop departments. They don't sell them out or anything like that. It's not like stuff like from films and all of that. Like you might see things like the Ruby Slippers, Judy Garland, and then the Wizard of Oz and all of that. Played Dorothy. It's not like things like that where they will sell for thousands of pounds. These sorts of props that they had on the set on the buses are all being stored away somewhere in case they're needed for a period drama or something like that. So you won't get things like props cropping up on eBay. They'll keep them in props departments. The same with the uniforms. All the uniforms will have been had all the insignia ripped off and no doubt stored away somewhere in case they need to reuse them for at some point for any other production, no doubt. Well, some of them might very well have been binned because they might be past that stage as well. No, you might find them on eBay, definitely, yeah, but you just need to keep your eye on them, really. I know that one or two late and recent times scripts for Holiday on the Buses and all that cropped up there. So I'm sure that you might find one or two of them cropping up on there, Adam. You just got to keep an eye on eBay, I suppose. Okay, so just keep those questions coming in. Once I've got questions coming up, I'll stay online and answer them for you. I don't think Anna's got any scripts left, Martin. No. Adam, that bus was scrapped, I think, in the late 1980s. Now the bus didn't end up in the sea. That was just a plywood and mock bus, if you know what I mean. That special effects for that makes the bus look like it's under the water was actually done by a man called Les Bowie, who actually went on to work in Hollywood, and he won an Oscar for his special effects on Superman 3, would you believe? He was the man behind the sort of like the effects of making it look like the bus was underwater, which it wasn't, of course. The actual bus, so as I say, that would have been scrapped in about, I think it was in the late 1980s, it was scrapped. So if you've got any more questions, just post them up and I'll answer them for you. So just post up your questions and I'll answer them as soon as I see them. Another book as well, which is a good one as well for you to maybe have a look round to see. This was written by two people that actually worked on the buses as well as runners. It's called Running Scared. It's mostly all about Hammer films, like so if you're into Hammer horror films, the two people that wrote this, Phil Campbell worked as a runner on Mutiny on the Buses, and Brian Reynolds worked as a runner on the first on the buses film, just on the buses film 1971. Phil Campbell, Mutiny on the Buses 1972. So what the runner's job was to do, if you need to know about that, they would sort of like be ready to take any script changes, rush for them out to where they were filming scenes at, or anything that was needed out there, like a fresh prop. They would run out there to where they were filming, or if they needed anything out on location, they would send for the runners to bring it out and that sort of thing. That's why they were called runners. It's got a few bits there, like as you can see about on the buses, which is quite good. That bit there about on the buses, obviously, and then obviously about the that was Mutiny on the Buses there, and also about on the buses further back somewhere. So it's called Running Scared. That's another book that you might want to look out for. It's got a little bit of info about on the buses and the making of it and all of that. Okay, so you've got any more questions, just keep them coming. I'll answer them for you. As long as I've got questions coming in, I'll stay online and answer them for you. Okay, so just post up your questions. If you've got anything to do with the on the buses or the locations or anything like that, anything to do with my books or the events, just post them up and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. As I say, do watch the space in the next week or so. Hopefully, I'll have another one, maybe two virtual walking tours up for you to view as well. And then, as I say as well, sometimes sort of like obviously when the lockdown ends, hopefully I'll be able to get out and photograph and do some actual live videos from the locations. Okay, have you got any more questions, anyone? As long as I've got questions, I'll stay online. But if the questions dry up, then we'll give it about another 5 minutes or so and see how it goes. Okay, let's see. So if you've got any questions, post them up and I'll answer them for you. Post them up down this box there, and as soon as I see them, I'll answer them for you. Got any questions about on the buses? Anything to do with the film locations, the TV series, the films, anything to do with the crew that worked on it? Another thing for anyone that's interested as well that I've been doing of late is these lithophane, they're called. You see what I mean? They come out, and that's one of the Rutland Bridge and Holiday on the Buses. You get a light and shine it behind it. Gives off a nice little effect. Got like a CD printer, a 3D printer, and print all of these off. So you see what I mean? You've got that there. Don't know how well you can see that. Got various designs of those. I've also got them for sale up on my Facebook group if anyone's interested in those sorts of things. Got other ones as well. There's ones of Stan and Jack and Holiday on the Buses. Ones of the Holiday Camp Gates and Holiday on the Buses. One of the Cemetery Gates. Need to get full effect by putting the light behind it as well. You get a better view of how it looks when you put a light behind it. And that's one of the low-level bridge and Holiday on the Buses as well. Okay, so has anyone got any questions at all? You hurry up and get your questions in, and I'll stay online and answer them for you. Just seen a couple of people join us, so hopefully you'll have some questions. If you want to post them up in the box down the side there. Right, okay, I think I'm going to, somebody has come online, so if you've got any questions, give you another 30 seconds to pop in, see if you want to answer a question. Just pop up on the screen if you've got a question, type it in, or I'll just call it a night now. Okay, so I think we'll call it a night now. The questions have all dried up. So thanks for those of you who popped in. Adam, Martin, earlier on, Victoria, obviously, Adrian, Steve, and Radio and TV Memories. Thanks for all of you for popping in and asking questions. And I'll say good night, okay?